Ever wondered who are the richy rich of India? We have the answers. According to Hurun Global Rich List, Mukesh Ambani has been ranked 9th on the Hurun Global Rich List and the richest man in India, followed by Gautam Adani and family, who are globally ranked at 23rd. Cyrus Poonawalla globally at 46th and Shiv, Nadar and family at 50th. Lakshmi and Mittal and SP Ahuja and family shares the 76th rank on the list together. Dilip Shangvi and family at 98th rank, followed by Radha Krishan Damani and family at 107th rank. These are the top 10 Indian billionaires. Mukesh Ambani, Chairman and Managing Director of Reliance Industries, is the only Indian in world's top 10 billionaire list with a total wealth of $82 billion. Mukesh Ambani saw a dip in his fortune as his wealth fell 20%, but he has managed to surpass Gautam Adani. Now Adani, who lost $28 billion in wealth or 3,000 crores in just a week in 22-23 due to the scathing Hindenburg report, slipped to the second spot among Indian billionaires and currently holds a net worth of $53 billion. Even as the number of billionaires dropped by 8% globally, India added 16 billionaires and occupies third spot on the 2023 M3M Hurun Global Rich List among countries that added new billionaires. Those, of course, are big numbers there, and we have two very important people joining us very shortly. I think Hurun India Managing Director and Chief Researcher Anas Junaid is with us. Also with me in the studio at this point in time, Rakesh Kar. Rakesh sir, I want to come to you first at this point. It appears that India is shining bright once again as far as global rich list is concerned.
Well, I think, the rich list, as it's called, casts us in a very strange binary. The moment you talk about the numbers increasing, there is a loud cry against these rich people in this country. The total number is 187 for India, if I remember it correctly. And the total number of billionaires is 3119. Just put it in context, 3119 for a 8 billion population globally and 187 for a population of 1.4 billion people. So it's still a very small microscopic number. Should we be happy with it? Should we be sad with it? I think, as a country, we must be happy with the number increasing every year. We had a few dropouts, but we have few additions as well. We are number 3 in dropouts, number 3 in additions. Net, I think we are number 3 in the overall list. How do we look at it? I know there will be a lot of pessimistic view of is that, India, the richer are getting richer, poor are getting poorer. I would like to contest that right away by saying that in the last, from 2004 till 2006 to 2019 and 2020, we have taken 41.5 crore people in India outside of the purview of the poverty. That's a very large number, 41 crore. It's, we need to do a lot more. We still have a lot of people who are poor. 16.5% is still poor in this country, out of which 4.5 are extremely poor. So how do we look at these three numbers? 4.5% of population being very poor or critically poor, 16% still poor, but 41.5 crore people have been lifted out of the poverty lines. And these are not numbers given by the Indian government, these are UNDP and World Bank numbers. So if you ask me frankly, I would say far greater reduction in the poverty levels at one level, and a far greater rise in the number of billionaires. That's how we should define the India growth story. Okay.
We are yet to get through to our guests here who are supposed to join us on that very important story. But Rakesh, Indian billionaires have added nearly $360 billion to their cumulative wealth in the past 5 years. $360 billion is equivalent to Hong Kong's GDP.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. As I said, it's data stories, how much it reveals more than it conceals. So if I analyze this figure of the Indian billionaires' wealth being equal to GDP of Hong Kong, there's another way of looking at it. For instance, Jeff Bezos lost more than the combined wealth of Ambani and Adani. So there is a list in the same release that has been issued by Hurun today of massive losses that have happened in the billionaires list. So I don't think we should sit on an ideological quarrel with these numbers. We should say, let's aspire for more and more billionaires. Let's aspire for further, sharper, quicker poverty reduction in this country. The two don't, exist in divergence. They have to exist in convergence, where people are brought out of their poverty levels, and we have many more people getting rich. See, remember the fundamental economic principle. If there are wealth creators, then only they'll be able to create more wealth. And let's also remember that 75% of India's GDP is in the private sector. If the private sector is rich enough, then only we'll be able to generate jobs, which in turn will take a larger number of this population outside of the poverty curse.
Okay. I want to talk about income divide in just a bit, but I'm told Pankaj Bansal is with us. Pankaj Bansal is the director of M3M Group, is joining us here. Pankaj, take us through the key takeaways, the salient features of this list.
I think this is very important for all the entrepreneurs to understand apart from the India growth story. I mean, everybody knows that ease of doing business in our country, the new vision which is laid by our Prime Minister is great. Entrepreneurs like us and industrialists like others present in our country who are part of the global rich list or who are part of the Indian rich list, they feel very happy working in the country. So it is great for us to get the real data, real facts, where the world is moving, which are the other sectors globally which have been performing, where the service sector, the financial services sector, wherein the real estate is amongst the top 10, but not amongst the top 3. So it gives us a great clarity in terms of, okay, which are the sectors one, as a businessman, one should focus on to be part and become a part of the rich list in the near future.
Okay. Now, absolutely. Yes, Rakesh.
Pankaj, congratulations on putting out the list today. It puts India billionaires in global context and global billionaires in Indian context. Tell me, the moment you release the list, there is a certain, what we call stipulated response about the inequality in this country. When you draw the list, how do you look at it yourself, framing the list? I just explained myself, my own view. I don't know whether you could hear me. I said that, we need to have many more billionaires in India while we pull out many more people from poverty, below poverty line and bring them into the mainstream. But how do you look at it framing the list?
My view, so that's actually done by Hurun India. My view, coming as a partner with Hurun India, is that, okay, there is some platform which gives us transparent list and the basis and the data that is absolutely transparent for this list. And as an entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur in our country, who's working in the real estate sector and maybe other sectors in time to come, my viewpoint here would be that when we look at these lists and young entrepreneurs like me look at these lists, we get a lot of clarity in terms of the sectors which are performing globally vis-a-vis the sectors which are performing in our country. Where do we lack when it comes to the modernization, the support of government in terms of the business which we do? So as an entrepreneur, we do not look at the data. I mean, our focus is to look at the sector, which sector is performing sector and a non-performing sector, or wherein we can make more wealth and wherein we can make less wealth. So that is how, as an entrepreneur, we look at the list.
Before we move to the Hurun representative, I have a question for real estate. It's still under under tremendous pressure. There are some representatives from the real estate sector, but would you like to see many more? And when do you see that fair representation coming from this sector in the Indian context?
Okay, is it for me to answer?
No, it was for M3M gentlemen, because I thought let's finish the real estate piece, then I'll come to you.
Okay.
So I thought it's for Anas. Okay, sorry, Anas. I think
no, that's okay. We'll speak to
you. In the global rich list, I don't think so. In the top 10, still there are people, and there are, I think, Anas, correct my number. There are how many people from the real estate sector in the global rich list?
Almost 177.
Only 177 people looking in. So this gives opportunity and enthusiasm to people like us. So to become the part of list in the near future. And I think India is on a growth curve with ease of doing business, few other opportunities which have been taken by the government. So I think in the next year you will see many more real estate developers who will be part of this list. And post-COVID, we have already seen the complete downturn of the real estate, wherein it was not performing, and today it is one of the most performing sector, wherein we've also become the second job creator for our country. So I think my view is very clear. For the next year, we will have many more people from the real estate in this part of this list.
Okay.
Can I would just
absolutely, Anas.
I would like to add.
Yes, Anas.
Add to what Pankaj said. Just to give you a perspective, China has almost 100 billionaires from the real estate sector. Okay, and you know what, the China's GDP is possibly 3 to 4 times more than India is, and we as a country are aiming towards doubling the GDP by end of the decade, right? And that's the kind of plan that we have, and the per capita income going to increase over this period as well. For that to happen, there should be many more super value creating billion-dollar businesses from India. And the billionaires is basically and effectively a function of these billion-dollar enterprises being built. That's one side of the story. Another side of the story is somewhere like US, which is possibly 1/4 of India's population, has only about 25 to 30 known US dollar billionaires. Has 25 to 30 US dollar billionaires. Now, a country like India, which is 4 times that of US population, has possibly 12 billion-dollar enterprise, billionaires from the real estate sector. So it is this value creation, wealth creation, all that stuff. It kind of tells you a story of how a country is progressing over the next decade. So I always say this. So the M3M Hurun Global Rich List, it's like a photograph, right? You take the photo of the list launched in the first year, 2012, and look at where India is. India possibly had about 49 billionaires at that point in time. And then you take the photo every year and look at how that photo is progressing, right? So that gives you the story of the economy and puts the whole thing in a context. And what we're trying to do here is we don't really care about the final value or the number and so on. What we are more interested in is about the story of how these numbers are created, how this wealth is created, and we can play our little part in terms of telling these stories and inspiring more wealth creators. So that's the whole idea.
Yeah, thank you for the context. Before I come into the sectoral play for the entire list in the Indian perspective, tell me, whenever the list comes out, as I said, it sets you in a certain context. There's this entire debate reignited about the inequality in this country. When you frame the list and present it, as the face of this billionaires in this country, how do you look at that, so to say, criticism? I personally feel that we need many more billionaires, we need many more people to be brought out from the poverty circuit into the mainstream. But the reality on the ground is that it's our political economy, our political ecosystem lends to this very, very interesting debate. And whenever the list comes, that debate gets reignited. So you to say you're at the receiving end, do you look at it that way?
I totally agree with your point in terms of what you said earlier. People debate about this rich-poor divide and so all that stuff, right? But fundamentally, what I truly believe in is there are two things. One is economic development, and second is economic prosperity, right? From an economic development perspective, people always say that if India hit GDP of, let's say, 10 trillion, there'll be a lot more billionaires. But the fact of the matter is only if we have many more billion-dollar enterprises can we hit a GDP of 10 trillion or 15 trillion or whatever. So if you have those many billion-dollar enterprises, the billionaires are going to be created. That is a fact of life, and it's going to happen. For the economic development in a democratic country like India, which is a free market, which lets entrepreneurs prosper, wealth creation is going to play a huge role, and number of billionaires is only going to increase. That's number one. The second, that is the economic development side. Now, the economic prosperity. What we would also like to see is wealth creation and is philanthropy catching up with wealth creation, right? And so that is something that we like to closely track, and this is going to play in a wider economic prosperity as well. So, but again, this philanthropy can only happen when there is more billionaires created, and also India is in a very fast-growing path. There could be a lot more super IPOs and cash-out events and opportunity that might happen in the near future. And once that happens, you could see a lot more money going back as philanthropy. We are by default a very philanthropic society. So I really believe that talking about the stories of transparent wealth creators or these billionaires are very, very important to spread the message and inspire more into wealth creation. And
I think you made a valid point.
Yeah, so
one way to blunt the possible criticism, which you can't do away with completely, is that as part of the rankings and the index, you also bring in giving back to the society. What we call globally, there's a debate about stakeholder engagement and shareholder engagement, or enrichment of both the faculties. So in that sense, or the corporate citizen quotient, is there a way that are you looking at building this capability in the index, where at least you say that suppose X person is a top billionaire, but he has also contributed to wealth creation in terms of generating jobs, giving back to the society? Is that an area of improvement for the rankings?
I think it's a very fair point. I think we put out a list called the Hurun India 500, wherein we speak about the tax paid, employment generated, and all those kind of information in the report. Maybe the next year, specifically to the rich list, we can also write about the companies that are run by these entrepreneurs and what are the kind of societal impact that these companies have made. That's a point that could very well be added.
The other point that I
But
felt,
end of the day,
probably I didn't read it that well because we've just got the numbers. The penetration of billionaires is, so to say, focused and concentrated on big metros. That, to my mind, is a failing. You know, the way India growth story is happening, it needs to be democratized in terms of its geographical location. Is that a failure? What is the possible cause, or have I read the data wrongly?
no, it's not a failure. You know, we must understand India is a 75-year-old country. If you look at the age of the country, so to speak, right? We are a teenager in terms of a country, right? We're not a very old country like that of China or the US and stuff. So we are very young in that perspective. So wealth creation, if from a hockey stick, we've just begun, sort of begun in India. Right. Just to give you some perspective, we published we've been publishing the India Rich List over the last 12 years. And when we started the Rich List, we could find entrants from about 20 cities in India. Now we find about entrants from about 85 cities, towns and all that stuff, right? So wealth creation is definitely spreading. I think it's just a matter of, you let the country grow. I mean, we should let the country grow and see how it achieve that transformation by moving from teenage to adulthood to maturity and so on. When you see that process happening with the GDP growing and all that stuff, you would see wealth being spread across cities for sure. That's
Junaid,
and
the numbers with
already
you,
I can already see it. Yeah.
If you have the numbers with you, because can you please educate us on beyond 4 big metros? What are the other cities in the top rankings?
There is some place like Trichur is there. Then you've got Chennai is there. Then you've got Ahmedabad. Then if I go to the wider, smaller, rich list, basically this is a billionaires list. We also publish something called list of entrants with a net worth of 1,000 crores and above. There we have entrants from Udupi to Ludhiana to Vadodara, to all those places, right? All the tier 2, tier 3, Coimbatore. A lot of places. So what would happen now is, this is M3M Hurun Global Rich List is a list of billionaires from India, right? And we also have the Rich List, which talks about anybody with a net worth of 1,000 crores and above. So over the next sort of 10 years, what you would see is the individuals with 1,000 crores and above, which comes from these 85 cities, towns, villages, those areas, right? They will all hopefully create more wealth, and they will all start eventually become part of the M3M Hurun Global Rich List, and you would definitely see cities spread. Some of the city representation spread, but definitely it's not a failure. To answer directly on that question, it's not a failure. It is just a matter of the evolution of this process happening. From wherever, from a few cities to a more number of cities.
Right.
Currently, we have how many? We have about.
Anas, quite agree and concur with you that India is a relatively young democracy, and I think will take time. We'll get there eventually. But really appreciate you joining us on this bulletin at this point in time. Anas, Pankaj, thanks very much for joining us with all those details. Appreciate your time.